It feel like Miami.
Miami, 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 Miami,
Miami.
Miami, 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 Miami.
It feel like Miami.
Welcome to the Heat Beat Podcast. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas, and with me today, friend of the show, one of the greatest Canadians I've ever met, an authority on the Cleveland Cavs, and the host of the Chase Down Podcast. Justin Rowan joins us today. How are you, my friend?
I am great, man. Thank you so much for having me back. Love what you guys do, the whole Heat Beat crew. Honestly, the Heat coverage in general is elite. It is S-tier stuff, and it's great to be back here on the pod.
I love our community, although we've been whiny, Justin. It's been a whiny year. The fans...
Well, I've noticed.
Pods...
Your Heat Twitter is insane, man. It is insane. Like, I see Bam slander, and Bam is having a phenomenal year. I tweeted during the last Cavs Heat game that Miami is asking entirely too much of Bam, and I got attacked by Heat Twitter saying that I need to hold him accountable. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Dude, it's crazy. Some people think Bam's doing too much. Some people think Bam's doing too little. Some people think Pat's asleep at the wheel. Some people think Jimmy's asleep at the wheel. You know, everybody, no one's happy. You know, just I don't know how much you follow European football, but like I compared it yesterday. Liverpool is having a disaster season, and they're having the season that Heat fans think they're having.
I'm going to politely nod because I don't follow any of it. But you know what? I'm going to be supportive of you in whatever takes you have, because I know they're well informed unless it's about Kyle Lowry.
They're usually bad. Listen, I love Kyle. Even I could say Kyle's been not good this season.
Yeah.
And as Canada's finest, as you know, he's beloved. Well, I guess in some cities, is he loved everywhere? Because I know that Toronto's not like the whole country's team.
No, it really is not. And you guys have probably interacted with Raptors Twitter enough to know why it's not Canada's team. So it's the same effect to the rest of the country. Although the We the North years definitely kind of helped build it back up. But at the end of the day, not for me.
No, it's just not. Well, we're not here to talk about the Raptors. We're here to talk about a former, I guess, Timberwolf and Cleveland Cavalier, Kevin Love, coming to the Heat on the buyout market. As there's been a lot of reporting done. Brian Goins has done his cap numbers and all that. Looks like a biannual exception or around that figure for Kevin Love joining the Heat. Justin, we're going to get to a lot today on what Heat fans should expect from him, because I feel like everybody's watched him. We've watched him on the biggest stage for years. So I don't think anyone's unfamiliar with his game. I think we know what he's good at. I think we know what he brings to the table. But I think what we want to know is, at this point in his career, what should we expect? So let's start on offense. So he has some sort of hand thing that he says is better, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I think, and I just want to know, like, how much shooting should we expect from him? He was a 6th Man of the Year candidate last year, was probably the runner-up to Tyler Hero. Some, like Nikias, said he deserved it. So, like, you know, what could we expect from him shooting, like, from the corners, out of pick and pop? Like, what is reasonable to ask from him at this point?
Yeah, well, first of all, he was the rightful 6th Man of the Year because Tyler Hero led the Heat in minutes. That was a phony award. I believe he did actually lead the Heat in minutes, which was a big part of my many grievances with awards season going back to Rookie of the Year. What to expect with Kevin Love, that's tricky. So it all went off the rails this season when he broke his thumb on his shooting hand, which is not ideal. He was told that he could not do further damage playing through it, and decided to play through it. And it was reported at the time that it was expected to heal kind of by the end of December. He was still experiencing some discomfort with it after the bone had healed, and the shooting just fell off the map. Like he was not hitting any of his shots. They were in a position where they really had to rely on him because you look at the top 3 teams in the league in player games missed this year, it's Miami, Orlando, and Cleveland. We're back in that situation, right? Like we're friendly company there. But if Kevin Love's hand is healed and he is able to shoot it like he was earlier in the season, I do think that he's going to be able to help out Miami a fair bit. There's always concerns about the back and other issues with him. The mobility, I think, has taken a bit of a step back this year. But if the hand's healed, I honestly think with his smarts, his ability to be a playmaker, and the shooting that he normally provides, I think he is going to help Miami a fair bit.
So, like, Justin, like, my thing with guys sometimes is, I know he hasn't played a ton this season, which I think is good because I think they need somebody with fresh-ish legs. Not that he's an older guy, not that they're like fresh, but, you know, fresh-ish, like Dedmon gave them a couple seasons ago, kind of come in after not playing too much. But I just think that he's going to have a very defined role, right? He's going to screen a ton for guards, and they're going to add kind of a pick and pop element that they haven't really had since Myers Leonard, because as I talked about with Tucker last pod, he wasn't really a pick and pop guy. You know, he'd pick and pop and nobody would guard him, and nobody would pass it to him. He's really like a corner man or whatever. And I think that he'll have a role in kind of participating in dribble handoffs as a big with Max Strus, which I know that he can as a passer. I mean, he's just really good at kind of hitting those same angles that Bam does off cutters and off that motion. And I think if you just kind of relegate him to that role, it's like, hey, Kevin, we don't need you to like do a ton. We don't even really need you to rebound too much because like they're a pretty solid defensive rebounding team. Like, don't break your body doing that. But hey, can you provide some screening, some shooting, you know, mix in a roll here or there? I think that's like a reasonable and like, can you get to 38% on like 3 or 4 attempts? Yeah. I think that's reasonable.
I think that that's perfectly fair to expect. I mean, having him in a defined role was a big part of why the Cavs had success with him and why he was in the Sixth Man of the Year conversation, because they kept the minutes at about 18 per game. You had good defensive infrastructure around him. He was usually playing with one of Evan Mobley or Jared Allen, which was a luxury that the Cavs had. And the only games he missed last season were due to COVID. He did not have a single game missed due to injury last year. And the timing of the broken thumb was brutal for the Cavs. I mean, it came at a time where Dean Wade was already taken out as a result of playing the Raptors. That happens. You end up hurt after those games. Darius Garland had a sprained thumb on his shooting hand. There was injuries all up and down the lineup, so they really did need him to play. And it's so unfortunate that it got to where it did. But looking at Miami, I think he can replicate a little bit of what they even had last year, right? With those Bam Yurt minutes, where you did have 2 bigs that could provide some playmaking, right? Like, I don't know.
They didn't play those a ton though. Like, it was a very like short-lived dream for some on Heat Twitter.
And for me with Yurt on my fantasy team, but
why? How many teams are in your league?
Deep. It was deep. It's
Dude,
a dynasty league.
Like...
I was, you know, it was a great short-term play for the time it happened, and then playing him when Bam was out too. But even if you're talking about lineup continuity, right, where maybe it's not necessarily with Bam, but you have a big man in the front court that can act as a bit of a hub and open up opportunities for other guys and give you some lineup consistency and continuity. I think that there's a real value in that. And honestly, if I'm looking at it from a Miami perspective, I'm probably bringing him in off the bench.
Interesting, because that's been the big discourse the last week.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it changes up as the season progresses, and maybe you close with him. But I would try to stagger him and Tyler Hero as much as I could. Like that would be something that I would try to prioritize if I'm Miami, just because I think Miami does have the defensive infrastructure necessary to make it work. But you don't want those 2 on the court at the same time. Like, I think that's asking a little bit too much of everybody else around them, even though it's not like Hero is a Trae Young type defender. It gets a little bit away from Miami's identity.
That's interesting. And that's not something I've heard too much, Justin, in the discussions, because I think the conventional wisdom with that is, well, Caleb and Jimmy are really your 3 and 4, right? And Jimmy's the one that's guarding up. I think that there's like this misconception with Heat fans are like, Caleb's the 4, Jimmy's the 4. Jimmy's the 4 and Caleb still guards. And they had that luxury because Kyle will guard wings, right? Kyle guards Middleton. Kyle guards Jaylen Brown, like, or Tatum sometimes. Like, Kyle guards up because that's what he's good at. He's not good at fast. He's not good at De'Aaron Fox. He's better at Jaylen Brown. That's just what it is. Yep. And they would have kind of Jimmy guarding wings, and I think you want Jimmy kind of back off those bigger wings so he can be in more help positions where they're not running like him through screw, like not in pick and roll and stuff, but he can kind of help at the nail, kind of help, kind of stunt drive, stuff like that. So, but yeah, I guess you bring up a good point in that I just feel like you bring Love and Zeller in. And now you have now you're bringing Love and Zeller off the bench. It's just kind of, not that Zeller's a bad defender or anything, but it's just kind of like, it's weird in conjunction with the Zeller move.
No, for sure. And I think the Martin Jimmy kind of front court with Bam, like I do think that works.
They're good, by the way. They're like +7 or +9 or something per 100 possessions.
Right, and you look at even the lineup data for Kevin Love on the year, he did get picked on a fair bit defensively, like he is going to get targeted, but that's just because you have a defensive liability on the court doesn't mean you're automatically going to give up a ton of points, right? Like it's not like the other team walks down the court and says, "Hey, you're a liability. We are granted 1.5 points per 100 possessions or whatever." Like that's just not the way that this works. Or same thing with like size mismatches, right? Like I think we get a little too obsessed with that. And you look at the D rating with Kevin Love on the court for the year, and it was 112.
Solid.
Yeah,
good.
like that's fine. It's not that far off from Miami's for the year, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Miami necessarily has the same level of defensive infrastructure, or at least defensive depth that the Cavs have.
No. I mean, Cleveland's the best defense in the league this year. I think maybe last year we'd have a different conversation. I mean, this year they're hemorrhaging size and really they're. I don't know if you saw this stat, Justin. If you take Miami forces a ton of turnovers, and that's like really kind of what they've designed this year's defense on, because it wasn't that way last year. They don't foul a lot, which is such a departure from SPO teams, and they force a lot of turnovers. And there was Cooper Moorhead, great guy covering the Heat for Heat.com and for the NBA.
Does great work.
He's terrific, and he put a stat that's like, if you discount the possessions that the Heat force a turnover, they have like the 28th worst defense in the league.
Ooh.
And it's like that's kind of to what your point. Like it's just that Cleveland is incredible. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Miami, it's a little bit of a SPO job there. Like a little SPO magic making that work.
It's SPO magic, and in my opinion, Bam is first team all defense.
Yeah. And Jimmy's no slot. I mean, this is Jimmy's best defensive season, but that guy on any given night. But Bam's Bam.
Yeah, trust me, I'm one of the biggest Bam fans out there, right? Like I probably have him first team over Allen and Mobley this year. But when you're talking about what you can do as a collective, and especially now that you see like the Cavs with Isaac Okoro in the starting lineup, like that is 3 very high level defenders that make up for. Yeah, it's a lot of length, and even like Darius Garland has got to the point the last 2 seasons where he's just playing.
He's
good
competing, man.
Defense.
He's playing really hard on that end in a way that I didn't think a guard his size was gonna survive like that, and he's been. It's kind of like Steph, to be honest with you. How like Steph made it a point comparison. That I'm not gonna be the reason why we get fucked.
Right, and you're going to have instances where, let's say they do end up giving up a switch, and he's got a bigger guy on him, but he's going to play good positional defense. He's not going to fall asleep when he's off ball. He gets a lot of steals. He's very active. Even gets the dumb fouls that Steph gets when you're kind of gambling, but just plays good, solid positional defense, and Donovan Mitchell stepped it up too. So it's a big part of why they've managed to have the best defense this year. But I mean, Kevin Love, I think people do kind of discount defensive rebounding, right, as a component of defense. If the help defense is there and you're not allowing breakdowns at the point of attack, you're not going to like hemorrhage points because you have one poor front court defender. Like that's just not how it works. Like we don't talk about defense as a collective often enough. So I think you might see it a little bit more in the playoffs. We'll see how healthy he is, and obviously if the shooting's not there and he's still struggling with that, his effectiveness overall just kind of goes in the tank. But at the same time, I do think if the shooting at least returns to normal, that there's enough there with Kevin Love that I was expecting him to be helpful for the Cavs down the stretch. So I'm not going to change my opinion just because he was bought out and ended up on Miami.
So I like what How About You Falls asked in chat. because you mentioned the defensive rebounding. He's like, how good is he at offensive rebounding? Because that is Miami's like 15th or 16th in defensive rebounding on the year, which is like good enough. But offensive rebounding, they're one of the worst teams.
Yeah, I don't think it's a particular strength for him. Like, he will get the tip-ins around the rim. That was one of the things that the effectiveness of that kind of went out the window when he was dealing with the thumb injury. But he's a really smart positional rebounder, right? Like, and that translates offense and defense. If you fall asleep on him, he will get position. He will get kind of those tip-in opportunities. I don't think he's going to necessarily generate those
Ignite
the way that he.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to generate those the way that he did when he was younger, where it's like it's a 40-60 ball where they should be getting this, but I'm just going to put my body into them and brush them aside and get that rebound. But
He's also slimmed out over his career.
Yeah, he did slim down, but I don't think that had as much of an impact. I think it's more the lack of just the lateral quickness. It doesn't just translate to defense. It also is going to translate to when you're trying to execute a box out, whether that's on offense or defense, trying to fight for positioning. Not necessarily having that same lower body mobility and strength is going to have a little bit of an impact. But I definitely think he can help on the boards for Miami.
So, want to make a quick correction. So, they're 5th in defensive rebounding. They're 15th in total rebounding. So, they're a good defensive rebounding team, which is, again, credit to Spo and all the dumbass shit he does, because they're playing with two small forwards and a center. And credit to Bam, credit to Jimmy, Caleb, all those guys. They don't have a power forward on them. Now they do, but they didn't before. So, credit to them for patchworking that. Let's talk about Love. I want one more question on offense, and then we'll get to defense. So Miami has not had a stable corner shooter this year. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of one pillar of their offense. I mean, their offense is, stinky winky, sucks ass. But I think whenever their offenses have been either good to decent in this Jimmy era, they have kind of that corner presence that they need, whether it's to set a hammer screen for a relocating shooter, whether it's to just be there to kind of provide Jimmy an out off a help that will come. They want the help to come from the corners because it's an easy one pass. It's an easy pass for Jimmy. He's not LeBron, right? He's not doing crossbody fucking flip. He's not making those complicated reads. Like they need these things simplified for Kyle as well at his age, and for Bam Peralta. So I think that having a guy in the corner is really good. They just don't have that guy this year. It was PJ last year who was really, really good until he got hurt in the playoffs. It was Jay Crowder the year that they made the finals, and Jay was really good from the wings as well. But how does Kevin play into that? Is that a space on the floor that he finds well, or is he just more of like an above the break kind of shoot off the screen type of guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of come in waves, right? Like obviously with LeBron and Kyrie, him being in the corner was a big topic of discussion, right? Because that's kind of where he was parked a lot of the time. And I think as time's gone on, he's learned how to be effective in other situations, right? Like I think Miami, I can see a lot of split cuts and those type of actions with Kevin Love, and he's so smart, and his relocation is so good that playing with the basketball IQ he's going to have with him on Miami, I think he's going to be able to generate those opportunities in the corner, and is going to create opportunities for other shooters, right? Like one of kind of his go-to moves that I guarantee you guys will see at some point over the next 20 games is some sort of split cut action. The ball swings to him. He pump fakes, guy goes flying right by him, and he just kind of does a little escape dribble to hit a shot, right? Like that's go-to stuff, bread and butter stuff for Kevin Love. So if they're generating open looks for him in the corner, I would expect, if he's healthy and if the back's not an issue and if the hand's not an issue, I'd expect him to knock that down.
So Miami's kind of done. It's interesting because they kind of moved away from the corner stuff when PJ started to kind of flounder as a shooter there, and they started to run like their empty corner sets where they have like PJ will screen for a guy to relocate out of the corner, and then they'll kind of raise kind of the to use a soccer term like to raise the back line, right, to press so that Bam rolls and there's no help, or Jimmy rolls and there's no help. They haven't done that too much this year, and I wonder if Love can help provide for that. I don't know. I'm just really intrigued by him. They just haven't. He's so skilled as a passer. You need passing bigs to run that stuff. They can run high-low stuff with him and Bam. If they're going to bring him off the bench, like you think, I wonder where he's going to be on the floor with Zeller, because Zeller is a non-shooter. So Miami has this. They really they walk a fine line, because Jimmy's a non-shooter and Bam's a non-shooter. And
do you really think Zeller is going to be like a mainstay in the rotation? Like, how deep is how many men is Spo going to go with? Like,
so
are you seeing 8 or 9?
Okay, so we can go through them.
Let's this out. Let's do this.
Because their backup 5 situation, Justin, has been a nightmare. Are you aware that Dwayne Dedmon is the worst player in the NBA? Are you aware of that?
It came up because the Cavs fans are very obsessed with having another center for whatever reason.
Every fan base is.
Very concerned about it. Don't like this one of Jared Allen or Evan Mobley at all times, and Robin Lopez and Diakite as backups. So when Dedmon hit the buyout market, there was some clamoring from him. Like, trust me, Mamadi Diakite is probably better than him at this point. And honestly, I'd probably say the same thing for about Serge Ibaka. I think he's pretty toast.
I wanted Serge. I talked myself into Serge with this because of those the shooting skill set. I don't know, man. I have fond memories of 2019.
No, oh God, 2019. I mean, unless everyone's getting hurt, I don't think there's any way that you can replicate 2019. That being said, I just felt I was familiar with how bad Miami's front court depth was, because really, as you said, Jimmy's playing there, but I'm not really going to count him as a 4-5. He's just playing out of position, helping out there. It's so funny because I think everyone understands team building just on a conceptual level, right? Like you know what you want to have at every single position, but realistically, when you're talking about team building in the NBA, it's making do with the best talent that's available to you, right? Like, you're going to try to get the best talent that you can and find ways to make it work. For the Cavs, they have a bit of a hole at the 3 spot, right? Like, Isaac Okoro is probably not starting for most playoff teams. Kevin Love's not going to be in the discussion for starting on any playoff team other than Miami, because they have so much depth at other positions, right? Like, every team makes these concessions in team building. So I think it was a unique situation where he could come in and
he had a role here that he didn't in Philly. Although I suspect that the Philly talks were to avoid tampering, because that just made no sense. But I want to give you this Dedmon stat because it is funny. As a whole, the Heat are 18th in net rating, plus 0.1. Without Dedmon, the Heat jump into the top 10 in the whole league.
That's tough.
They are legit a top 10 team when that dude is just not here.
Yeah, that reminds me of a lot of the Lamar Stevens lineup stats for the Cavs this year. Which was tough, because Lamar started, and the time that he was starting, they would win all those games, but the starting lineup was a net negative, and it was one of those things where it's like, do you mess with the rotation?
Classic New York
taking
Knicks.
him out of it? Yeah, it was just one of those things, but they're in a much better position now with Isaac Okoro kind of coming into his own.
So let's do this little thought experiment real quick about Miami's players, right? So you got, Lowry and Vincent, who are, really your real 2-point guards, right? You got Hero, Oladipo, who are your next 2 guards. So we're at 4 players. You got Butler at 5, Strus at 6, Caleb. Oh, we already said Caleb. So we're at 6. Bam at 7. So those are your 7 guys that are playing for sure.
Yeah.
Now we're
Love at 8.
Love at 8. And then now we have a question about Highsmith, Duncan Robinson, and Zeller. And my thing is Love going to play backup 5? Because I've seen people say that guy can't play backup 5 anymore. So you're shaking your head. No. So we've named one center, which is Bam. And it has to be Zeller. Because, Orlando Robinson, while they can't still convert him. So Yurt has been hurt all year.
I mean, Alf is going to strangle you. It's got to be Duncan Robinson, right?
Listen, Alf is... It's funny because Duncan Threes has Duncan Robinson listed as power forward. Alf really won.
He really did.
Alf won.
The agenda was a complete success.
He has a bet with one of our co-hosts, Kenny Spence, that Kevin Love is going to start on Friday, and the loser, I believe, has to take a shot every Twitch sub.
Oh, I like that.
So, but
Like that
judging
a
from
lot.
what you said and judging from some quotes today, sounds like Alpha's going to be one drunk asshole on Friday against the
Well,
Bucks.
I mean, that was going to happen one way or another. But now there's a purpose that he can assign to it.
We have
Alf.
we have a Carter Shade in chat saying, "Look at this damn fool on the right. I don't respect this man."
I know.
You know what's funny,
It's a
Carter?
mutual disrespect.
I asked Justin before the show, and I said, "Do I introduce you as host or the co-host of the Chase Down? Because I don't want Carter to hate me." And then Justin said, "Fuck that guy."
Yeah, that's a direct quote.
Carter Shade, friend of the show. We love you, Carter. So, yeah. So, I mean, really, we're at like 10, 11 guys, and and we just went through this. Like, they need Zeller because, like, I don't really think Yurt's going to give them anything this year, and at least Zeller can switch. You know, like,
Yeah.
sneaky athletic, actually sneaky athletic though.
Yeah, he actually is.
Actually,
I don't hate the pickup for you guys. Like I think again, if he's healthy, which seems to be like the Miami Heat motto is the Miami if they're healthy. But if he's healthy, I think that he could definitely be helpful.
So you do not feel confident about Love playing the 5 at all.
No.
And is that just because he's just a huge target in pick and roll?
God, I mean, that's a big part of it. Like I said, the mobility has kind of gone downhill. If you have enough point of attack defenders around him, maybe you can get away with it in spurts. I just have a hard time seeing that really being a viable lineup, especially with how pick and roll heavy, like, and just how pick heavy the league is, period. Like it's not, nobody's running like naked pick and roll these days, but like second or third action within a half court set, at some point you're going to give up a rim opportunity if he's your 5.
I just wonder if they can get away with like a Lowry, Oladipo, Butler, Strus, Love lineup or something, or like Butler, Highsmith, Lowry, Vincent, you know, or
I guess my question would be like, how many minutes do you foresee him playing? And because if the
About
answer
20.
is, yeah, if the answer is 20, is the best use when you're trying to make a 48-minute rotation, is the best use of those 20 minutes like 5 minutes with him at center? Or would you be better off really kind of maximizing what he can bring in some of those spacing deficient lineups and just having Cody anchor those like the 5 minutes where you want to have someone else at center? Like, I just don't know if the best use of his time and the best utilization of the available players is playing him at the 5.
they just Justin, their offense is so bad. They just need something, and I'm just wondering if like, man, can we throw him at the 5 and get like real like him at the 5 with Butler, right? Because you're eliminating the ban factor at this point, and we just go as 5 out as possible for what like for those 5 minutes, right? Can we get 5 minutes where Bam could sit and we can score a ton of points? Now maybe Zeller's really good, and maybe they don't have a problem because I mean I've noticed this, Justin. Like Embiid has this problem. Like these really good centers have this issue where like they can't fucking leave. Right, like Bam can't leave, or else the whole fucking operation falls apart. Embiid can't leave because whatever the parade of washed-up centers that Morey brings in, you know, none of them work. So
I can't relate.
yeah, you're the opposite. You have a litany of bigs and wings. What's that like?
It's very weird to see a defense first version of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So yeah, just like I don't know, like I'm like, can they get 5 minutes of good offense and like you bolster it by like, okay, like Oladipo really good, you know, and maybe Oladipo might not be the solution because like he's like another non-shooter, but you know maybe a Vincent, Lowry, Butler, you know, plus other wing either Highsmith or Martin.
Yeah,
is that viable? I don't know. I mean, you know, I mean I know that it's not fair to ask that of Kevin, but
it isn't I mean, there's 2 months left of the regular season. Isn't that what? Like maybe you screw around one night in Charlotte or something like that. Like let's see if this can work. Or
that seems like a bad team to try it against.
I was about to say maybe not a.
That seems
team.
like them and the Kings be like the teams that would
you
never.
guys just lost to Charlotte too, right? Recently,
did we? I don't know, man. I can't keep track of bad losses.
I think so. I think that was one of the bad losses. But maybe you play Houston, right? A team that just has no idea.
Knicks. We lost against the Knicks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you trot that out against Houston if you play them.
Oh, we did lose against Charlotte. Chat's reminded me.
And there you go.
forget.
I see. I've been scoreboard
blurs,
watching
bro.
for a while. I've
Justin,
been standings watching for a while, buddy.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of made up my. So I was of the opinion of this team. I'm like, well, let's see what they do at the deadline. I think that, obviously they were really good last year. They lost one piece and a bunch of guys regressed. But Lowry obviously like playing hurt and doesn't like look the same. Like, can they make like a couple like fringe moves and like put everything back into order where like I think that they look competitive again. And they had started to put shit together, right? Vincent got healthy. All their guys, like a bunch of their guys started getting healthy again. And they put up a really nice stretch of ball where they beat like a couple quality teams. And they went into Dallas. It was like a Friday game in Dallas. At Dallas. And I said, you know what? A good team fucking wins this game. Because you're on a roll. You finally picked up momentum. You're going into a good, not great team at home with a really good fucking player. And you should be motivated because that's like an MVP candidate. And Justin, it was an ESPN game. They fucking went in there and they laid the biggest fucking goose egg. They got blown out by like 30. It was fucking embarrassing. And I'm like, this fucking team's unserious. And like maybe... and like, I don't know, man. Like, I think good teams win that game. Like, and then they go into Cleveland, one of the best home teams in the league, a defensive juggernaut for this fucking team that can't score. And they go in and Jimmy grifts his way and they win that game like barely after an embarrassing start.
But then on the other side of that coin, that's a game where Cavs fans are ready to give up on the season, right? Like someone needs to be held accountable of this. We lost to Miami.
Did you say we lost to a bad team?
No, but it was,
that would have been funny.
Like it was, we need to get a statement win here, right? Like this is a team that we should beat, that we should be better than. Like all the players said, hey, like disappointed. Like from my perspective after that game, I was saying this was a game that I was kind of hoping that Donovan Mitchell would be, hey, this is a big game, big moment. I'm going to step up at this time. And it seemed like he was the one kind of most rushed in that lineup, right? Like Darius Garland looked more composed than he did. And the Cavs, they were hard on themselves after that game, and then they went on a 7-game winning streak after that, right?
Miami was so close to catching them, and then both teams went the opposite directions, and I was like, boy, Cleveland's far away.
Yeah, right. Which normally you don't see a veteran like Kevin Love get bought out from a 4 seed and join a 7 seed, right?
Why did he get bought out, Justin? Is it just like, because to me, I was like, I understand what he did for the organization, and I know that he's like one of your favorite Cavs, if not your favorite Cav. I know that he's like beloved by the fan base. So I understand like wanting to do right by a guy who's done everything for you when there's not like a role for you. But also like he came, I think we all know what the Heat are, but like they're kind of the boogeyman in the East. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they let him go to the boogeyman in the East. And there were the reports of like, well, you shouldn't go to Miami, and everyone kind of shit on Cleveland. And I was like, I respect that. Why are you going to let a player that is good or that at least is getting healthy to go to your biggest rival at their biggest position of need? I'd be like, Kevin, we gave you a fat ass fucking contract. I'm sorry. You may just have to sit there and earn your money. Like, I'm sorry. And they did it, but they bought him out. Was that just like a, hey, franchise legend, we love you, we want to do right by you? Or what was going on there?
Well, I mean, first, let's point out that was some bad aggregation. It was like aggregation of aggregation. That
my favorite,
like,
bro. NBA Central, baby.
They're not letting them go to Miami. NBA Central aggregating Sam Amico, thinking that it's Sam Amick. It's
like an inception of Sam's.
Yeah, exactly, right. But I think it was Windhorst saying like this is a thing that teams have done, right? Like, so I could see them doing this, but ultimately, obviously, that wasn't the case because he was bought out. And I think from Kevin Love's perspective, Kobe and JB both said we can see him playing a role at some point in the future, but he's not part of the regular rotation. And for Kevin Love, who's looking to get another contract, and obviously he's a prideful player, he's a future Hall of Famer. He didn't want to be Howell Neto. I don't want to be someone that's in this rotation as a luxury or in this roster as a luxury and only playing if there is an injury, right? So from a Cavs perspective, their philosophy and their team culture is we want guys that want to be here. And Chris Fedor, I believe today, did report that they did shop him at the deadline, and there just wasn't an option that was available or that felt worthwhile.
That's crazy because like Crowder went for 5 second-round picks, and that dude's not good.
Right, but you're probably looking at matching salary, right? So if you take back $30 million when Darius Garland's contract extension kicks in next year. You lose your mid-level exception, so you lose some flexibility there. It's probably harder to re-sign Karis LeVert or sign him to an extension. Like, you lose a lot of flexibility if you are swapping him for someone. And I mean, you look at what players went for. Like, it might not have been that. Maybe teams want an asset in addition to that, right? Even though he is an expiring contract. So there wasn't an option available. But the Cavs philosophy has been, we want people that want to be here. And Kevin didn't want to be here. And rather than go the ugly route of, hey, we don't want you going to an Eastern Conference rival, so you stay home. Like, that's not going to fly in the locker room. That's a well-respected guy. And while it's disappointing, it's it's a no-win situation for the Cavs. Like, there's no situation where buying out Kevin Love is a legitimate plus for this season, but he's already out of the rotation, right? Like, if they stay healthy, there's not really going to be a loss there. And it sucks, but it just seems like it was probably the right way to go.
Listen, respect for them for doing the right thing by a franchise legend, right? Like, I think that's what.
Plus, there's a pipeline, right? Like, the Cavs keep giving guys that help Miami develop a culture, right? Like, LeBron comes and brings that Cavs culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cavs lifer Dwayne Wade comes to Miami.
Don't forget Drunas Ilgauskas.
Gives you guys an infusion of culture. Now Kevin Love can bring some of this Cavs culture. So, it's just a steady stream, a little feeder stream, which there's always.
LeBron really just brought his homie here. He's just like a big bald white guy. He's coming with me.
We talk about the Ilgauskas in Miami season, similar to you guys probably talk about Wade in Cleveland.
Oh, like it didn't happen?
Yeah,
it's crazy that people Photoshop that. It's pretty disgusting. All right, Justin, I know we gotta let you go. Last thing I wanted to talk about real quick. So, and I said this on the pod a lot. Miami. We're not playing for a title, I don't think, unless a bunch of crazy shit happens, right? I don't see that happening. I just want them to win a playoff series. You know what I mean? Like, I want a good old fashioned first round win and be a pain in the ass to somebody in the second round. And they're two
Cavs goals this year too. Like, that's our prediction, or that's what we're hoping for on the pod.
And that's fine, right? Like, that's for a lot of teams. Listen, Sacramento Kings, they don't even care if they win a playoff series. They're just happy to be here. You know what I mean? So it's not like I think fans like overreact to that, but regardless. So that's kind of like one thing. And obviously they're most likely first round opponents. I just think they're going to finish above New York. They played the Knicks 3 more times. They're just better than the Knicks. I just don't. That was a weird. Yeah. So I'm just penciling them in at 6, possibly 5, depending on what happens with Brooklyn. Obviously, they're very talented, but we got to see how that works out. So Cleveland or Philadelphia are the two likely matchups. Giannis's hand injury kind of makes things different because they could drop, Cleveland could move up. So but I still think that Philly, Cleveland are the two likely matchups for them. And I got to be honest, Justin, I would not pick the Heat in a Heat Cavs series. I wouldn't. I think Cleveland's really good. I think they can hurt Miami at point of attack where they're weak, particularly like kind of how fast they can be with Garland and Mitchell, and just they can maul you with size that Miami doesn't have. And we saw that game. I think if they replay that game in Cleveland 5 times, Cleveland probably wins. They're a tough team. I'm just going to say, like, they have a puncher's chance. And we saw them go into that building. We saw how Jimmy can kind of pick on small guys. I think what you talked about when you talked about, like, okay, well, guys just don't come and, like, hunt a, like, mismatch every time. In the playoffs, that's what Jimmy's one of the few wings I think that can do that. And I think we overrate, like, Trae Young fucking skated a whole playoff season, even against the Bucks, just skated and never really got targeted. When he played Miami, it was Jimmy Butler.
Spo's not going to do that.
No, and Jimmy, because it's the kind of wing. It's like Kawhi, it's LeBron, it's Jimmy, and like that's kind of the list because Tatum doesn't even hunt you like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, if I'm doing a Heat podcast and I'm picking between those teams, I'm picking Cleveland.
I'm picking Philly personally. I think I like that matchup.
Yeah, because you got hate in your heart too, right? Like that's guts, bro. Yeah. See, just be honest. Be honest about what it is.
I hate them, bro. I hate them so much.
The audience knows you. They know what this is. No, but at the same time, like if you're just removing all emotion from it, you're going to pick the team with the least amount of experience.
Yeah.
Jared Allen is 24 years old, and he's a vet. Like, Darius Garland just turned 23. Okoro's 22. Mobley's going to turn 22 soon, right? Like, Donovan Mitchell's... Like, they're young. That's why I'm okay with like winning a series and being pesky in the second round as a goal, because you don't win in the NBA without experience, right? Or at the very least, you're going to have more hiccups when you're inexperienced, right? So from my perspective, I would rather see a team like New York, like Brooklyn. If you made me predict how the standings are going to play out, I actually think it's probably going to be Milwaukee, Boston, Cleveland, Philly. A bit of a spicy take because Philly has Philly has the toughest schedule. I think Boston's got a relatively kind of difficult one.
And Embiid's not the picture of health. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right. So like, I think that's probably going to be how it plays out. And I would expect Miami to be in that 4-5. So I think you might get your wish with Philly. But if you're talking about like from a morale standpoint, from a Cavs perspective, like I would love to get the Knicks in the first round, and you take care of them 5-6 games, whatever the case may be.
4.
This is going to be an annoying game. Dude, we lost a game where Mitchell got fouled at the end of the game, didn't get called, but we lost because Julius Randle went 8 of 12 from 3. Like, like weird stuff happened.
Where was that the 3-point contest, bro? That was so funny.
Buddy, let me tell you, because Cavs fans were going off like, well, if you leave him open, he's going to hit the shots. And I'm like, well, no, it's a late contest. But it's Julius Randle. He was shooting 33%.
You can leave him open.
You can leave him open. So like weird stuff happens. So I'll say 5. But if you're talking about what would make Cavs fans actually feel like more confident going into next year, a hard-fought series against Miami, beating Eric Spoelstra, who I believe to be the best coach in the NBA right now, right? Like the number of adjustments you are going to have to make in a series against Miami, that's something that you can hang your hat on as a young team, right? So, but from your perspective, absolutely. Like, pick the Cavs. I'm not going to be offended by that because I know this is what it is. This is what the NBA used to be, right? Like, young teams go to the playoffs, they take some lumps. It's a process that takes multiple years. Like, as much as there is still a lot of player movement, there's a lot of kind of organic growth again in the NBA.
I was literally thinking that the other day, Justin.
We used to celebrate that, right? Like we romanticize Michael Jordan spending 7 years trying to get over the hump, and eventually
look at the teams in the East.
And Detroit eventually got old enough for him to beat them, and then like went on his own run, right? Like that's what it used to be. Boston, they started their run against the damn Cavs with LeBron on, and they finally go over the hump last year. Like this is what
Kyrie Irving's been on 4 teams since.
Exactly, right? Like that's the way that this thing used to go. And I think
Milwaukee?
people they just rush the process, they rush their expectations. The sports debate culture has turned winning and losing into a genetic trait or a character trait. So oh my god, if my team loses, I can't say, well, we just like they need to have some internal growth in this area and they can work on this on the offseason. No, it has to be no help, coach sucks, this person sucks, this guy's a loser, we got to get rid of him. Like, no, that's not the way the NBA works. So I would love a series against Miami. It would stress me the hell out. I would pick Brooklyn or New York over them. But like, man, beating Miami, that would be a real feather in their cap.
I love that you say that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that about the internal growth, because I was thinking about that with the Warriors, how this might be it for that team that kind of came together like that. And I thought, well, Boston's kind of really grown together over a really long time. Milwaukee as well, right? Like that Giannis Middleton build. The Sixers, right? This Embiid, whatever. I mean, they've had different variations, but like this Embiid Sixer thing, and obviously Miami's in year 4 of Jimmy, and Cleveland's kind of started something. So I don't know. I think it's a fun matchup, and I think it's a likely one, at least one of the 2 more likely ones that we're gonna get. Justin, man, thank you so much for coming on. The chat liked you. Liana says I like this guy.
Here we go. Thank
Justin. Justin's a reasonable guy. Thank you for coming on, for talking Kevin Love. I know that's your boy. Justin, where can they find you? What are you doing? What are you and Carter doing so that they can go listen to you guys and learn about other teams, or listen to you guys when the Heat play you guys?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Cavs Canada. Just slap Cavs in Canada and you'll find me there. I apologize for everything you find after that. I suck. I'm awful. You can find the Chase Down podcast wherever you get your podcast, wherever the hell you were listening to this podcast. You can find us there. You can also find us live on the Cavs YouTube channel.
The Cavs? The official Cleveland Cavs?
Those Cleveland Cavaliers.
The team?
The 2025 NBA champion Cleveland Cavaliers. You can find us on there. And in fact, I'll be going live in about 20 minutes. So I need to hydrate a little bit and get ready for that. But thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
You are the best. Carter, shout out if you're still in chat. You guys are awesome. Justin made a lot of time for us today on short notice. And we'll see you tomorrow. Well, no, actually, we won't see you tomorrow. Our next broadcast, we're off until Friday. We get Hangover Time. Hangover Time returns. Friday edition. Alf and Kenny have a bet. Want to tune to that. Pre-gaming 30 minutes before tip-off against Heat Bucks. Kevin Love's debut and Cody Zeller's debut. So exciting stuff. These two white guys are going to light it up in Milwaukee. Cream City, baby. We'll see you guys on Friday for coverage pre and post. Love you guys. Take care.